So I get to sit up here with one of my favorite people, who happens to work with me, a colleague here, Stefan. And he's going to be telling us specifically about some of the wonderful things that are happening right now, as well as those things that are coming in the near future, maybe the very near future, or maybe the far distant future, we'll find out, in the Polkadot ecosystem in general. So with that, I want to kick things off and tell us a little bit about what's been happening. There's been so much happening this year in the recent past in the Polkadot ecosystem.
Sure. Thank you, Dan, for a lovely intro. I'm Stefan. I'm Director of Engineering of Parity. So Parity is kind of a main engineering effort behind Polkadot, one of the main engineering efforts, and yeah, we've been building for the past 5 years, and we're very excited. So I guess a recap of the last year is definitely the most interesting point. There's been quite a few very cool things that have been happening. I would say that continuous growth of our ecosystem is obviously the first one, adding a bunch of parachains, and that's definitely something that is most important. And I would say that release of XCM is a huge thing. I like to say, like, I know we talked about XCM today quite a bit, but how I like to describe it is like blockchains. When you're starting a blockchain, and Sean like touch on this, like when you're starting a blockchain, you have these two huge problems, right? You need to build it, and you need to secure it. And Polkadot was solving these two problems, right? It was this like unique selling point of Polkadot was you have substrate, you can build it, and then you leverage shared security of Polkadot, and you can just secure it. So what XCM is actually bringing to the table is this extra level of interoperability that gives successful chains a reason to stay on Polkadot and continue to be on Polkadot, even if they've like built their own chain and grew their own community to a certain standard already. So XCM definitely a big deal, and continuous XCM integration with the parachains. I would say one of my favorite projects is Substrate Connect. So that went out last year, and that is now in a stable phase. So Substrate Connect, for those of you who don't know, is a JavaScript library that wraps around the light client. So it's a JavaScript embedded light clients, browser embedded light clients. And I mean, that is the coolest thing ever, because it solves one of the biggest things in Web3. It actually makes Web3 possible. Like Web3 in its core is not possible if we have a centralized RPC endpoints that are used for communicating with the protocol. We have this decentralized protocol, right? So the protocol is there, and it's decentralized on a protocol level, all these things. But like to use that protocol, actually more than 70% of transactions of Ethereum, for example, are going through a centralized infrastructure, right? So that goes down, and it has a bug, or there's an incentive of reordering some transactions, or like doing some exploitations, or whatever, or there's a hack, which never happens in blockchain, right? So until we solve this problem of majority of transactions being initiated through centralized endpoints, we are not truly in Web3, and Substrate Connect solves that problem, and we are the only ecosystem that has anything like that. So I think that is something that is huge.
I know for me, yeah, it's been like mind-blowing and revolutionary to be able to, with this Substrate Connect, it hooks right into things like, I know the Talisman wallet, I think at one of the events, launched and said, oh, it took us about 10 minutes to configure, and all of a sudden we're running with this permissionless RPC node that runs in your browser as opposed to like in some cloud machine somewhere else. So like it's so crazy cool that not only is it doing like fulfilling the promise of Web3, but we're also able to use it with like zero effort. So it's amazing to see some of the innovations that can come out of like what we're doing here at Parity, for sure.
Yeah. what else? I guess there's, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that you think for last year?
Man, this year it's been so full of so many things. And I think in particular, just seeing in the past year, the parachains come into all these slots and start to run in production. And to just, for me, it's been mind-blowing to see the applications that are possible, right? And people are just experimenting still in these phases. It's amazing to see how many things are really innovative that couldn't be done elsewhere. So like what Substrate provides you the power to do, as we found out a little bit, a few of our panelists in the last talk, as well as now XCM is coming around, so V3, right, this version 3. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of the innovations that are coming through, because now the promise realized of these so far distinct chains, really, and unconnected chains are coming together in pretty amazing ways. So maybe you can tell us about XCM a little bit more.
Yeah, so I guess we can't really talk about XCM V3 without talking about bridges, right? So this is one of the things that is coming out this year, and one of the things I'm super excited about. We took an approach of launching what we call a system parachain. So there, of course, as one of the things that happened last year was the growth of system parachains. So we are trying to push as much of functionality from the relay chain into the parachains as possible, keeping the relay chain simple and keeping functionality in the parachain for multiple reasons. One of them being that allows other builders to see how some of those functions are utilized through parachains and inspire themselves to continue building on top of that. So right now we have Statement and StateMine, which is our asset chain. And then the Collectives parachain, of course, which launched the Fellowship. Big deal that also happened last year. But what we're trying to do this year is launch a Bridge Hub, which is going to be a chain that is going to host a parachain that is going to host bridges to other chains. And the first chain that is going to be hosted is going to be Polkadot Kusama Bridge, coming end of Q1, beginning of Q2. So very soon, I'm super excited about that. Actually, right after Denver, I'm going to a bridge retreat where they're going to code some of the final parts of that. And then we'll have Ethereum Kusama and Ethereum Polkadot Bridge.
Super cool. Yeah. So, and in fact, you mentioned it. Maybe we could dig in a little bit further. It's not obvious to me, and I think to a lot of people coming in, this idea of like pushing out some of the functionality of the relay chain out to these systems parachains. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about like what does it mean to be a systems parachain, or like a common good parachain, I think I've heard, and versus a like other parachain that we might hear from the ecosystem, as well as then this notion of the relay chain trying to be as, at least quote unquote, dumb as possible. It wants to have as little functionality as far as like you wouldn't even have user balances necessarily accounted for on the relay chain. So talk to us a little bit about that, because totally unique to Polkadot.
Exactly. So we have this this parachain architecture, and we want to utilize it ourselves. So it was always the idea of having as much functionality on the parachains as possible. Obviously, that functionality, when it comes from the ecosystems, comes in the shape of parachains that go through auctions and crowd loans and have their own token and all these things. But there is an alternative way, and the alternative way being a system parachain, meaning that is what is recognized as a common good, in a sense that, and that was the original name of the parachains. They were common good parachains. System parachain is definitely a better name because it describes a wider range of functions that we're having there. But the idea here is that those chains get automatic slot. Those parachains are getting automatic slots. And they do not have their own tokens, so they are actually using the native relay chain token for the transactions. So first of them being the asset one, now we have collectives, and they are basically there to incentivize all dot holders to actually use them in whatever capacity they like to, and just add more functionality. I heard Emily described it as you get an iPhone with pre-installed few apps pre-installed out of the box, and you can use them. You don't have to, but you just get this extra functionality right as you become a dot holder. You already have some basic stuff without actually going even into the parachains. And obviously, it helps parachains as well because it adds extra functionality they can leverage through XCM.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like you just described it, what comes to my mind is effectively Polkadot is the operating system on which all these other applications that are parachains, including some of its own core functionality like governance and things like maybe assets, can reside in. So that's super cool.
Exactly, yeah. One of the efforts that engineering is going to focus on this year is moving staking out of the relay chain into the parachain. Governance obviously is one of the candidates as well, and it's really exciting, yeah.
And this is all powered through XCM, right? So we're able to communicate between the systems parachains and the relay chain to entrust with such critical, mission-critical stuff that needs to happen. It's pretty awesome to see that not only is the system parachains tapping into this, but also at the same level, all of the other parachains that want to get a slot can have that same robust security. We're trusting the systems parachains and the communication between the relay chain and those at the same level that you can trust these ecosystem parachains that anybody can get a slot for. That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is enabled by the parachain protocol, but it is leveraged by XCM for sure.
Super cool, super cool. So I'm curious now, we talked a little bit in this last panel about some of the ways that we can get more interoperability. So I wonder if you can talk to me a little bit more about like what you're excited about moving into the future now that we have Polkadot today, and talked about some of the things that are starting to develop on like XCM V3 and parachains and parathreads moving forward.
I mean, the sky is the limit, right? That's kind of the point when you are infrastructure provider, you, in best case scenario, you're not even able to predict what kind of apps are actually going to be built on top of this. So it is quite challenging to be an engineer in this environment, like a core engineer, because you're trying to put as little obstacles as possible for people, and then hope that they actually come up with the most creative use cases of what they build in this multi-chain use cases, right? Some of the stuff that I'm excited about. So obviously, it all revolves around XCM and XCM V3. Actually, I have this vision of this, and this vision encompasses a few things actually. So I have this vision of this portal where you can do transactions through any parachain on relay chain, or any chain attached to the relay chain via bridge, and this portal will potentially, like, for example, calculate all the transactions costs of, like, if you want to move Ethereum over to whatever Polkadot account or some attached parachain account, and then let's say you can do it over some of the parachain bridges, or you can do it through these new trustless common good bridges, or you can do a swap instead of on some of the dexes that we have for the wrap tokens. And you just have these old possibilities, and all these possibilities are leveraged by, obviously, XCM V3. But then again, I kind of envision this portal being a web app built on top of Capi, which is another project that is being developed in Parity, which is going to be kind of this multi-chain API, JavaScript multi-chain API. We call it parachain first. So it's going to be a little bit easier to leverage all these multi-chain transactions, and obviously this potential portal would leverage Substrate Connect, and would do all these transactions through a light client. So that's kind of that's kind of as far as I can, as far as my mind takes me in this thinking of this multi-chain future. But I don't know. I guess more creative people can go further than that.
Yeah, like you say, not really knowing what people are going to create, but trying to make the best foundation for it, that's a pretty awesome future. And whatever the palette will be in which people compose like these applications of many different parachains functionality and just have one simple user interface to do all this complicated stuff in the background. I don't know, as an engineer, at least an aspiring engineer, I really am excited by the possibilities of composing these crazy complex systems and presenting them to people as extremely simple, useful tools. So that's something I think is really exciting. I know I'm very excited to see that start to come to fruition we're finally at the point in my mind that Polkadot is going to be able to deliver on all these promises, right? This year we're really seeing that happen. And moving forward, it's only going to really blossom. It's amazing. You know?
Yeah, I think this year is the year that we're trying to kind of prove to people that we kind of delivered on a lot of the promises that we made, and I guess the best proof for that is that we build these use cases and then inspire people to continue building on top.
Yeah, I know, like, there's a lot of talks that you'll hear throughout ETHDenver, and there's still a lot of, like, we're going to do this, and we're going to get there, and in so many ways, we've arrived in Polkadot, at least at the beginning of a really cool story for Web3 to actually being realized. So less trust, more truth, man. Like, this, it's going to be a great 2023. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited for it. And so I mentioned it maybe very briefly. I'd love to dig into it with you. And so as the head of engineering here at Parity, can you tell us a little bit more about, like, specifically your day job? Because I, as an aspiring engineer, am envious of the work that you get to do. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it's like at Parity and generally being an engineer in the Polkadot ecosystem.
You're probably not envious of work I have to do, but engineers have to do. Because, yeah. But yeah, Parity Engineering is quite a unique organization. It is comprised of teams, and teams are basically dedicated domains, right? For bridges, there's a bridge team. Frame, there's a frame team. XCM, there's XCM team. Things like that. So they're very kind of divided by domain. And in that sense, that they are really, really focused on delivering on their own roadmap. What is kind of unique for Parity, I would say as well, from like an engineering environment, is that it's pretty flat. I think someone described Parity like management, or like my role more as a coach in a football team. Which I think is a really nice metaphor, because like it's not like being the best of all the people, but just like being in a different position that is in a supportive way. And I think of myself as in that way as well. And you just have a team of like these amazing people doing different things, and you're trying to point them into getting into one direction and delivering and being the greatest they can be in what they do, because they are. Like in Parity, we have some of the best people building, period. I would say even outside of Web3. So that is kind of like pretty much understood fact, and there is not that much you need to do other than just let them beat themselves and influence their own roadmaps and things like that, and you just try to help them and push them all in the same direction.
Yeah, coming from what I would consider the ground floor in support engineering, it's really inspiring to be able to, feel like I'm at the same level as people like yourself and people like Gav, just working on amazing things, just gigabrains like you guys have. And like no other company, it's this sense of leadership as opposed to management. It really is just like great people doing good things, and we're all working together. And just because somebody's higher than you, maybe in this very not so heuristic company, it's a good place to really feel that familial sense and all working towards some pretty amazing stuff at the same level.
Yeah, I think the guiding principle there is that we believe that if you have autonomy, you will achieve your best work. And then it's just working towards giving that autonomy to people.
Yeah, I think it really embodies also this Web3 spirit, is that there are no gods, there are no kings, right? It's a very decentralized and lead yourself kind of mentality, which is great. So I find it really empowering, and I really do enjoy working at Parity. And wherever we go together, I think the Polkadot ecosystem seems to kind of have some of that vibe. So like wherever you land in the engineering fields here, it's a great place to be.
But I think this is one of the things that I would like to touch on. So I think it's very important for people to understand that the Parity role that we play right now is not the role that we want to play in the future. We don't want to be a dominant force in our ecosystem or in Web3 at all. We just want to be one of the companies contributing. And so there's different ways to actually do that. And one way is just to pay lip service to it and just say, yeah, we want to do it, but not really, do anything about it. But I think Parity is actually doing quite a few things. Actually, one of the main initiatives is coming from the Polkadot ecosystem with the fellowship and with the development of that and funding people directly in the ecosystem for contributions to Polkadot. I'm talking about the Polkadot fellowship, but also there's going to be future fellowships for the ecosystem builders, for the Polkadot Ambassador program. These are the two that are being built right now. And then there are many, many more that can be built in the future, all together leveraging Polkadot Treasury, which is insanely cool. But then going back to Parity itself, I just want to point out that there are efforts right now in Parity to kind of seed the ecosystem and use the Parity's current role as an incubator. And we already have some things that are happening in that regard. For example, one of the things I'm super proud about is small dot development. So small dot being the core of Substrate Connect, the light client binary. We use spin out as a term. It spun out of Parity into the ecosystem. So the engineer, Pierre, who was responsible mostly for delivering that, is now getting funded directly to Treasury to continue building on small dot. And I think that is insanely cool. We are right now doing similar things with a few other projects, but also I think it's important to say that when we were thinking about this bridge, this kind of system parachain bridge, common good bridge effort, we were looking into the ecosystem and we found Snowfork, who were pretty far in development, and helped them actually be included in this initiative. So the Ethereum Polkadot bridge is not actually being built by Parity, but is built by an ecosystem company funded by Treasury. And these types of things, I know that they have been rare and they just started happening last year, but they're going to continue happening more and more this year and in the future. And we're going to use the position that we are in today as Parity Engineering, as a dominant company in the ecosystem, to incubate and seed the ecosystem with as many projects as we can, to emphasize the fact that the future is not centralized in any way, not even through a company like Parity.
Yeah, that's super cool. And talking about things to be excited about in the very near future, as in like today, the fellowship, and specifically, like you say, the first fellowship being around core development of Polkadot as a protocol, but many more to come, utilizing this treasury, which is core to this system, that can spur innovation throughout the entire ecosystem of parachains. So it's not just for Polkadot, and it's not just for Parity, right? This is now a foundational mechanism to be able to support potentially all of the monetary needs of the ecosystem, at least when it comes to development and supporting the network itself. I wonder if you can speak a little bit to that end about the fellowship, as well as I hear there's something like Polkadot payroll that's coming around, something along those.
So as an extension of fellowship, yeah. Idea there being that we want to have Treasury-backed independent funding for the fellowship members, right? Of a certain of a certain level, based on their contributions and based on their role in core development of Polkadot. And obviously, right now, this is still being kind of figured out, because we're breaking boundaries and we're breaking new ground here every day. But as a kind of a modus operandi for future, this is definitely something that I think is going to be crucial when we're talking about like any kind of grassroots effort inside of our ecosystem, and even maybe wider, right? That can be funded by Treasury, and people don't have to think about their like monthly income or whatever, and they can just focus on building what they're passionate about. I think also there has been this like thought that upside is coming only if you have your own token, right? So and not saying that that's main parachain building motivation, but it's there, right? Like you're building your own chain, and you have in the back of your head this idea that you're gonna own the tokens, and there is quite a big upside in the next bull market, for example, or something like that. And using that paradigm of upside, just tying it to a native token of a relay chain, for example, in a Snowflake proposal, and I encourage everybody to take a look at Snowflake proposal. It's on Polka Assembly. You will see that there is this notion of a treasury on their own treasury that is modeled based on the Polkadot treasury, which is going to be filled by the transactional cuts. And obviously that's going to be in the native token because they're a system parachain. They're built on a system parachain. So in that regard, they're tying their upside to DOT. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, they are actually incentivized to continue optimizing common good infrastructure in the future, because there is a linear connection between usage and their upside. So like playing with these incentivization models, I think is crucial for us to achieve the level of decentralization and activity in our ecosystem that we're aiming for.
Yeah, it occurs to me as you say that, I think it might be unique in the Polkadot ecosystem. It doesn't seem to be a combative environment where it's a scarce resource everyone's trying to fight over. This is a much more collaborative environment and a win-win situation, right? If parachains are doing well and modeling off of and working and integrating and supporting things on the relay chain as well as these systems chains, it's the entire ecosystem does well together. So that's, I think, something really cool. I don't see other ecosystems talking about that. Polkadot, I think, is at least positioning itself to do really well. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we're all gonna make it.
Yeah, we'll make it, man. Was it WAG me, y'all? It's gonna be fun. I know we're getting kind of short on time, so I'm wondering, is there anything else that we've missed that we should talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would definitely encourage people to take a look at, I guess, Parity job openings. We have quite a few in different areas, and yeah, we're looking forward to like be around at this event, and then later at the main conference and talk to people, and yeah, it would be exciting.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Hopefully you guys will come and visit us at the Polkadot booth that'll be over by the concession stand. I think there's a map. I'll put it back up on the screen at some point. And we'll be here up until the whole rest of the main event. It's going to be a really good time. So talk to us about jobs at Parity, potentially working not for or at Parity, but for this like Polkadot payroll thing, something along these lines, or other funding, I think, comes through Polkadot, or excuse me, Web3 grants and things like this. There's lots of ways to get plugged in.
Treasury proposal, there's a Substrate Builders program, there is a Pioneers initiative, Square One initiative. Definitely, there's many ways to get involved in our ecosystem, and yeah, anything from a simple treasury proposal on, I think, is cool.
Yeah, there's so many ways to get involved. My special call out for a way to get involved is the Academy as well.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the Academy that much, right? I think this is one of the most, I think it's one of the coolest things we've done as an ecosystem, because this is an initiative that's funded by the ecosystem. So it's not really Parity, but it's so cool. We have organized 2 academies already, and we're planning on a 3rd one in Berkeley. And maybe you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So July 10th to August 10th now, applications are going to be opening this week, I believe the 3rd, and we'll be there for 5 weeks, really intense, academically rigorous program. The idea here is effectively to be a master's degree in 5 weeks to get you from competent-ish in Rust all the way out to becoming definitely competent to launch one of these parachains, or at least to become an engineer on a parachain team. And plenty more.
But I think one of the coolest things about the academy is the Substrate is a module that starts only in the week 4, right?
Yeah.
So there are going to be 3 weeks of people learning about cryptography, tokenomics, game theory, all the basic building blocks of any blockchain, not necessarily substrate-based blockchains, or not necessarily parachains, but just like a very intensive course into like the depth of what makes everything in Web3 work. And I think that's the coolest part. And like many of the graduates actually, some actually end up working in our ecosystem, but many actually go somewhere else. Yep. And that's totally fine. This is more of a altruistic effort of educating people in what blockchains truly are.
Yeah, absolutely. The Academy very explicitly doesn't want to be a boot camp, and it doesn't want to just bring you in to be able to be a parachain engineer. That's not the goal. The goal is definitely to give you the foundations to understand how very complicated consensus systems work, game theory and tokenomics and all this, as well as cryptography. So foundationally, what do you need to succeed in every aspect in Web3? Because that's really the goal, is to seed Web3 engineers. And I think so far we're doing pretty well. I don't know. Come and talk to me after if you're interested about the Academy stuff, and we can talk to some of the alumni we have in the audience as well. So yeah, I think with that, maybe we should wrap it up for now.
Sure.
All right, but Stefan, this has been so great. Thank you for all of your great insights, and hopefully we can come and find you for more questions.
Yeah, of course, I'll be around. And thank you for hosting, and thank you for a cool session.
Cool, this is fun. Thanks, guys. All right.